Question 1. From the perspective of Siebel server administration, Mr. Alvarez notices that certain workflows fail intermittently during peak hours despite no errors in the workflow design. He suspects that the server is overloaded. What should Mr. Alvarez do to mitigate this issue? Increase the number of active components in the component group to distribute the load. B. Recompile all business components in Siebel tools before running the workflows. C. Manually assign the workflows to a specific user to bypass the server. D. Modify the workflow policies to ignore peak hour triggers. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. The intermittent failure is likely due to server performance bottlenecks. By increasing the number of active components in the component group, load is better distributed across Siebel servers, improving workflow execution reliability. Recompiling business components does not address runtime server load. Manually assigning workflows bypasses automation best practices and doesn't solve performance issues. Ignoring compromises business logic and can result in incomplete automation. Server tuning and proper component group configuration are best practices in Siebel server administration. Question 2. Considering the evidence Chen needs to design a many-to-many relationship between accounts and contacts without creating redundant tables, which Siebel object should she use? A. Business component. B. Link object. C. Applet. D. Workflow process. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. A link object is specifically designed to model many-to-many relationships in Siebel, connecting two business components without duplicating tables. Business components represent data entities but do not inherently create many-to-many relationships. Applets are UI elements and are unrelated to database relationships. Workflow processes automate business logic and cannot define database relationships. Using a link object ensures integrity, maintainability, and adheres to Siebel data modeling best practices. Question 3. With respect to user interface configuration, Mr. Rao observes that a critical field in an account view is read-only for all users, even though some roles should have edit access. What is the recommended approach to resolve this issue? A. Modify the applet user property to enable conditional editability. B. Create a new workflow to update the field automatically. C. Reassign all users to a new position with full access. D. Delete and recreate the field in the business component. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. The read-only issue is likely caused by access restrictions tied to user positions or responsibilities. Reassigning users to positions with appropriate access ensures the correct privileges are applied according to the Siebel security model. Modifying applet user properties can control display behavior but cannot override access restrictions at the data level. Workflow automation cannot fix permission settings. Deleting field is unnecessary and could disrupt existing configurations. Understanding positions, responsibilities, and access control is crucial for UI behavior correction. Question 4. During the process of data import, Isa Patel notices that some records fail due to parent-child relationship violations in the CRM data. How should she ensure successful bulk import using IAM? A. Import parent tables before child tables to maintain referential integrity. B. Disable all validation rules during import. C. Import all tables simultaneously to speed up processing. D. Use workflow policies to autocorrect child records after import. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. To maintain referential integrity, Siebel IAM requires careful ordering of parent-child table imports. Importing parent tables first ensures that child records have valid references. Disabling validation rules risks data corruption and non-compliance with business rules. Importing all tables simultaneously can lead to referential integrity violations. Workflow policies cannot retroactively correct failed imports. Correct sequencing and pre-validation of data are fundamental to reliable IAM operations. Question 5. Based on the information, Mr. Sullivan wants to automate assignment of incoming service requests to regional teams based on air priority. Which Siebel feature should he implement? A. Assignment manager with rules configured for business criteria. B. Business services executing custom scripts for assignment. C. Applet user properties to dynamically route requests. D. Gateway name server configuration to distribute assignments. Answer. Correct answer. D. Explanation. Assignment Manager is the Siebel tool for automatically routing records based on business rules, including A and regional criteria. Business services can encapsulate logic but are not designed to handle dynamic workload distribution. App user properties affect UI behavior, not record assignment. Gateway name server handles server connectivity and component registration, not workflow-based record assignment. Correct implementation of Assignment Manager aligns with best practices for automated, rules-driven task allocation. Question 6. In the context of Siebel tools, Gomez wants to extend a business component to include a calculated field that concatenates two existing fields. What is the best approach? A. Create a calculated field within the business component definition. B. Use a workflow process to update a custom field after every record save. C. Modify the database schema to store the concatenated value. D. Configure an applet user property to display concatenated data. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Using a calculated field directly in the business component is the standard method for derived values. Workflows can update a field, but this approach adds overhead and is less maintainable. Modifying the database schema is unnecessary and violates Siebel customization guidelines. Applet user properties only affect display and do not persist data. Calculated fields or declarative formulas provide an efficient, standards-compliant way to extend business components while maintaining data integrity. Question 7. Through careful analysis of the Siebel architecture, Istakor observes that a web client session frequently drops connections, causing users to lose unsafe data. Which component should be examined first to troubleshoot this issue? A. Siebel Web Server Extensor configuration for session timeouts. B. Workflow policies for session persistence. C. Business component user properties. D. Assignment manager rule priorities. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Session drops in the web client are often caused by improper SL or web server session configuration, which controls session persistence and timeout parameters. Workflow policies do not influence client-server session management. Business component user properties affect data behavior, not connection stability. Assignment manager rules relate to task distribution, not client connectivity. Review SOM network latency and server performance is crucial to prevent session interruptions and data loss following Siebel best practices. Question 8. Taking into account Siebel security concepts, Thompson notices that a group of users can view confidential records but cannot update them, even though the fields are visible. What is the underlying reason? A. Responsibilities provide read-only access while positions determine write access. B. Business components are not properly linked to workflows. C. Applet user properties enforce a global read-only mode. ASO configuration limits field updates. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. In Siebel, responsibilities and positions define access rights. If users can view but not modify data, it is often due to the access mode set in the business component for their responsibility or position. Business components not linked to workflows are unrelated to access restrictions. Applet user properties control UI behavior but do not override access modes, so configuration impacts connectivity, not security. Correctly configuring access modes ensures compliance with security and business process policies. Question 9. Given the circumstances, Ista Rivera needs to deploy customizations from a development environment to production while ensuring minimal downtime. Which tool should he use? A. Application Deployment Manager ADAM with staged deployment. B. Bulk export of data followed by manual import. C. Direct database updates using SQL scripts. D. Modifying user properties on production directly. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Application Deployment Manager ADAM provides controlled deployment of repository objects and data between environments while minimizing production downtime. IM is for bulk data movement and not repository deployment. Direct database updates risk breaking Siebel integrity and bypass business logic. Modifying user properties on production does not deploy customizations safely. Using ADAM aligns with Siebel best practices for reliable, maintainable, and auditable migration processes. Question 10. In light of recent developments, is wants to automate notifications when an account's credit limit is exceeded. Which Siebel approach is most appropriate? A. Configure workflow policy to trigger notifications based on the credit field. B. Update the business component to mark the account as inactive. C. Use Assignment Manager to assign notification tasks manually. D. Modify the applet to show warning message only in the UI. Answer. Correct answer. D. Explanation. Workflow policies in Siebel are ideal for automating notifications based on data changes. Updating the business component to inactivate accounts is unrelated and could disrupt operations. Assignment Manager handles record assignments but not notification triggers. Modifying the applet only displays a UI warning and does not automate alerts. Workflow policies ensure automatic, real-time notification. Accordance with business rules, supporting operational efficiency and compliance with Siebel best practices for event-driven actions. Question 11. In the context of Siebel data access, is Rivera notices that a team member cannot see certain opportunities even though they belong to the same business unit. What should she investigate first? A. Check if the responsibility assigned to the user grants access to the opportunities business component. B. Modify a style configuration to include the opportunities applet. C. Update the business service to filter the opportunities differently. D. Recreate the view in Siebel tools to include missing records. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. In Siebel, responsibilities define which business components and records a user can access. If a user cannot see opportunities, the first step is verifying the responsibility assigned includes the opportunities business component. Modifying SO configuration only affects session handling, not data access. Business services do not control visibility unless explicitly invoked, and recreating views unnecessarily. Misconfiguration. Ensuring responsibilities align with required access is key to proper Siebel security and data access best practices. Question 12. Given the circumstances, Istasing wants to create a workflow that automatically updates the status of a service request when a related task is completed. Which approach is most effective? A. Use a workflow process with a step to update the parent business component. B. Configure a user property on the applet to update the status. C. Manually assign the task completion to trigger the status change. D. Modify the business component table to enforce a trigger on completion. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. To automate status updates, the workflow process should handle the parent-child relationship and propagate changes appropriately. Configuring applet properties only affects display and cannot persist changes. Manual assignment defeats automation objectives. Modifying database triggers bypasses Siebel logic and could conflict with workflow rules. Proper workflow design ensures that updates occur consistently from best practices for automation while maintaining data integrity across related business components. Question 13. Through the lens of Siebel configuration, Alvarez observes that a field is not visible in a particular view for some users even though it exists in the business component. What is the most likely reason? A. The view and applet configuration do not include the field for the user's responsibility. B. The workflow process hides the field automatically. C. The business component is incorrectly linked to the database. D. The field user property disables data entry for all users. Answer. Correct answer. D. Explanation. Field visibility in Siebel is determined by the applet and view configuration as well as user properties. If a field is hidden or read-only due to a user property, users cannot interact with it even if it exists in the business component. Workflow processes do not control field visibility dynamically. Incorrect business component links would cause data issues, not field invisibility. Understanding the interaction between user properties, views, and responsibilities ensures proper UI display behavior. Question 14. When analyzing Siebel architecture, Mr. Patel needs to optimize performance for a frequently accessed web client applet that loads slowly. Which strategy aligns best with Siebel performance guidelines? A. Minimize the number of joined business components and applet controls displayed. B. Increase the number of workflow policies triggered per applet load. C. Disable session persistence and EDLE. Recompile the Siebel repository before every client session. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Slow applet performance is commonly caused by large joins, excessive controls, or inefficient queries. Minimizing joins and controls is a standard Siebel optimization strategy. Increasing workflow policies per load would worsen performance. Disabling session persistence affects connection stability, not applet efficiency. Recompiling the repository repeatedly is unnecessary and does not improve runtime performance. Optimizing data retrieval and UI configuration ensures fast, reliable applet interactions. Question 15. According to recent studies, ISTA-Chen must ensure that only authorized users can update account records while others have read-only access. Which Siebel mechanism should he prioritize? A. Configure responsibilities and positions to control redirect privileges on business components. B. Implement a workflow policy to enforce data updates. C. Modify applet user properties to make fields editable. D. Use time to restrict updates on the account table. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Siebel security is enforced through responsibilities and positions, which determine whether users can create, update, or delete records in business components. Workflow policies automate logic but cannot enforce access at the component level. Applet user properties only affect UI behavior and cannot secure data at the database or business component level. IAM controls data import-export but does not manage real-time access. Correct configuration of responsibilities and positions ensures compliance with Siebel security best practices. Question 16. Within the framework of Siebel business process automation is wants to trigger a notification when an opportunity reaches a specific stage. Which approach is most appropriate? A. Create a workflow process with a conditional step to send email notifications. B. Modify the business component table directly to include notification logic. C. Use the applet to display a warning message. D. Assign the opportunity to a user manually for each stage. Answer. Correct answer. D. Explanation. Automated notifications should be handled through workflow processes that include conditional steps to detect stage changes and trigger emails. Modifying database tables directly is unsupported and could introduce inconsistencies. Applets only affect the client display and do not trigger backend notifications. Manual assignment undermines automation goals. Using workflow processes ensures event-driven actions are standardized, maintainable, and adhere to Siebel automation principles. Question 17. Demonstrated by operational reports, ISTA Robinson observes duplicate records appearing after IAM imports. What is the recommended way to prevent this? A. Configure proper primary key mapping and use IAM validation scripts before import. B. ABISA orging for data transactions. C. Just workflow policies to remove duplicates post-import. D. Recompile business components in Siebel tools before import. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Preventing duplicate records in IAM requires careful mapping of primary keys and validation of data before importing. Proper validation scripts can detect and reject duplicates before they enter the database. Logging does not prevent duplicates. Workflow policies act after records exist and cannot preemptively control data quality. Recompiling business components does not affect import logic. Following best practices ensures data integrity, consistency, and compliance with CRM standards. Question 18. From a practical standpoint, is Martinez wants to customize a view to include additional calculated fields for reporting purposes without modifying the underlying database. What should she do? A. Use calculated fields in the business component definition. B. Update the database schema to include computed columns. C. Modify the workflow process to populate new fields. D. Configure applet user properties to display concatenated fields only. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Calculated fields within business components allow derived data to be displayed without altering the database schema. Updating the database schema for computed columns is unnecessary and violates Siebel customization principles. Workflow processes are unsuitable for populating fields purely for display. Applet properties can show concatenated values but do not allow calculations at the business component level. Proper use of calculated fields ensures dynamic, real-time computation while maintaining repository integrity. Question 19. While examining Siebel workflow design, Mr. Kumar notices that a workflow policy fires multiple times unexpectedly. What is the most likely cause? A. The workflow policy condition is too broad, triggering on multiple updates. B. The business component is incorrectly linked to IAM. C. Applet user properties enforce repeated execution. D. SOS timeout is too short. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Unexpected multiple firings of workflow policies usually occur because the condition specified in the policy is too broad or the policy is linked to an event that occurs repeatedly. Incorrect business component linkage to IAM does not trigger workflow policies. Applet properties control UI behavior and cannot trigger workflow repetition. SOS and timeout impacts connectivity but not policy firing. Ensuring conditions are specific and event-driven prevents duplicate workflow execution while maintaining automation reliability. Question 20. Considering the evidences, White is tasked with deploying new applet configurations from development to production with minimal disruption. Which approach aligns with best practices? A. Use ADAM application deployment manager to stage and deploy the applet changes. B. Export business components via IAM and import into production. C. Modify production applets directly via Siebel tools. D. Update user properties individually for each applet in production. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. ADAM allows controlled deployment of applet changes from development to production while minimizing downtime. IAM handles data migration, not repository objects, so it is inappropriate for applet deployment. Directly modifying production applets in Siebel tools risks overwriting repository integrity and is not best practice. Updating user properties individually is inefficient and error-prone. ADAM staging ensures safe, auditable, and maintainable deployment in accordance with Siebel administration guidelines. Question 21. When faced with inconsistent data visibility, Mr. Johnson notices that some users can edit certain contact records while others cannot, even though they belong to the same team. Which is the most likely cause? A. The business component's field-level access mode is set differently for certain responsibilities. B. The workflow process is not triggering updates consistently. C. Applet user properties prevent data entry in all views. SO configuration restricts updates for certain users. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Field-level access in Siebel is controlled primarily by the business component configuration, responsibilities, and positions. However, if only some users experience edit restrictions, it is often due to applet user properties that override UI behavior, making fields read-only despite correct responsibility assignments. Workflow processes handle automation, but not UI editability. Settings affect connected, not granular field access. Correctly configuring user properties ensures intended user interaction without altering security or business logic. Question 22. Considering the evidence, Alvarez wants to reduce load times for a heavily used account applet that joins multiple business components. Which approach is most effective? A. Limit the number of joined business components and avoid unnecessary calculated fields. B. Inquisition timeout to prevent disconnects. C. Modify workflow policies to preload account data. D. Reassign users to positions with higher access privileges. Answer. Correct answer. D. Explanation. Applet performance is primarily affected by the number of joins, controls, and calculated fields in the business components. Limiting joins and reducing calculated fields improves query efficiency. Increase SOS timeout does not improve query execution time. Workflow policies cannot optimize UI load performance. Changing user positions may affect access but does not inherently reduce load times. Optimizing business component joins and applet design is the standard Siebel approach for performance tuning. Question 23. From multiple perspectives, Mr. Kim needs to enforce that service requests are automatically routed to the right team based on region and AA without manual intervention. What is the recommended Siebel solution? A. Assignment manager with rules configured for region and AA criteria. B. Modify business components to include custom routing scripts. C. Update applet user properties to display routing options. D. Configure workflow policies to assign tasks post-creation manually. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Assignment Manager is designed for automatic routing of records based on defined business rules, including A and regional criteria. Custom scripts in business components may handle routing but are not recommended as they bypass standard Siebel automation best practices. Applet properties control display, not routing logic. Workflow policies cannot dynamically assign records at creation. They react to events but are less robust than Assignment Manager. Using Assignment Manager ensures scalable, maintainable, and rules-driven task allocation. Question 24. Based on the information Patel wants to create a calculated field in a business component that combines two existing fields for reporting purposes. Which approach is most appropriate? A. Define a calculated field within the business component definition. B. Modify the database schema to create a concatenated column. C. Update the applet to display the combined field visually. D. Use a workflow process to update a field every time a record is saved. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Calculated fields in Siebel business components allow derived data to be computed dynamically without modifying the underlying database, providing real-time calculation and reporting. Modifying the database schema is unnecessary and may violate best practices. Applet modifications only affect display and do not persist calculations at the component level. Using a workflow to update the field is inefficient and adds runtime overhead. Proper use of calculated fields ensures consistent, maintainable reporting across the application. Question 25. Through careful analysis, Mr. O'Connor notices that some workflow policies trigger multiple times for single record update. What is the likely cause? A. The policy condition is too broad, matching multiple updates. B. So configuration prevents proper execution of workflow policies. C. Business components are mislinked to IM import jobs. D. Applet user properties enforce repeated workflow execution. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Workflow policies in Siebel execute when specific conditions are met. If a policy triggers multiple times for a single logical update, the condition may be overly broad or tied to events that fire repeat. So configuration affects connectivity, not workflow firing. Mislink business components to IM impact data import but not workflow execution. Applet user properties control UI behavior and do not trigger backend workflows. Ensuring precise event-specific conditions prevents multiple unnecessary executions. Question 26. In light of recent developments, Robinson wants to deploy applet and business component changes from development to production with minimal risk. Which is the best practice? A. Use Application Deployment Manager Adam to stage and deploy changes. B. Export data using IM and import into production. C. Modify production applets directly in Siebel tools. D. Update user properties for each affected applet in production. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Adam provides controlled deployment of repository objects, ensuring minimal downtime and auditable migration. IM is designed for bulk data movement, not repository object deployment, so relying solely on IM is insufficient. Directly modifying production applets is risky and can break repository integrity. Updating user properties individually is inefficient and error-prone. Following Adam deployment best practices ensures safe, repeatable, and maintainable production migrations. Question 27. From a practical standpoint, Mr. Singh observes that some users cannot see opportunities even though they belong to the same organizational unit. What is the best method to resolve this? A. Verify responsibilities and positions assigned to users to ensure proper access to business components. B. Modify applet properties to display all opportunities. C. Recompile business components in Siebel tools. D. Disconfiguration to allow access. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Siebel security is enforced through responsibilities and positions, which determine redirect access to business components. Users unable to see data may lack proper responsibility assignments. Applet property changes only affect display, not access control. Recompiling business components is unnecessary for access issues unless repository changes were pending. SOITs impact sessions, not data security. Properly aligning responsibilities and positions ensures compliance with Siebel security and access best practices. Question 20. Given the circumstances, IS wants to automate notifications when an account's credit limit is exceeded. Which Siebel approach is most appropriate? A. Configure workflow policy to trigger notifications based on the credit field. B. Update the business component to mark accounts as inactive. C. Use Assignment Manager to assign notifications manually. D. Modify the applet to show warning message only in the UI. Answer. Correct answer. D. Explanation. Workflow policies are ideal for automated notifications based on data changes triggering emails or alerts in real time. Modifying the business component to inactivate accounts is inappropriate and disrupts operations. Assignment Manager handles record assignment, not notification. Applet modifications only display warnings to the user and do not trigger automated back-end actions. Workflow policies ensure real-time, rule-driven notifications in line with Siebel best practices for business process automation. Question 29. When considering Siebel performance, Mr. Kumar notices that a web client view loads slowly due to multiple joined business components. What is the best approach to improve performance? A. Reduce the number of joins and controls in the applet. B. Increase OSN timeout. C. Configure Assignment Manager rules to preload data. D. Modify user properties to hide fields. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Performance degradation in Siebel applets is typically caused by large numbers of joins and complex controls, which increase query execution time. Reducing joins and minimizing unnecessary controls is the standard optimization approach. Increase SOS and timeout affects connectivity but not load performance. Assignment Manager does not preload data for UI performance. Hiding fields may reduce rendering slightly but does not address underlying query inefficiency. Efficient applet design improves usability and system responsiveness. Question 30. To illustrate this point, Is White wants to enforce that only specific users can update high-value opportunities while others can only view them. Which approach aligns with Siebel best practices? A. Configure responsibilities and positions to control redirect access at the business component level. B. Create a workflow policy to update privileges dynamically. C. Modify applet properties to enforce read-only behavior. D. Recompile business components to lock fields. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Access to high-value records is enforced through responsibilities and positions, which define redirect permissions at the business component level. Workflow policies can automate certain actions but are not intended for granular access enforcement. Applet properties only affect UI display and can be overridden, offering no security guarantee. Recompiling business components does not affect access permissions. Proper configuration of responsibilities and positions ensures controlled access and compliance with Siebel security principles.